Hello, my name is Britton Boyardi, and today I'm going to be talking to you about The Sins of Brunetto Latini, written by Richard Kay. So before I get into it, I'd like to give you some background on Canto 15, just as a refresher before we go into the article about it. It's based on the third ring of the seventh circle of hell, which is for the violence against nature. Here, the punishment is that it's raining snow-like flames of fire, and the sinners cannot stop walking, or they have to lay still for 100 years, unable to brush off the flames. The shade that we meet here is Sir Brunetto Latini, who recognizes Dante. He's widely known, it is widely known and believed that he is here for committing the act of sodomy. So, a few background points on Brunetto Latini. He was a philosopher, politician, poet, and scholar of Florence, as well as an early mentor to young Dante. He's greatly renowned for his orations and writings, and he took his influence, or a lot of influence, from Cicero. He's also known for his translations of Roman rhetoric works. He's very widely known for his writing of the Tresor, or also known as the Tesoro, which is the Book of Treasures. So Richard Kay's thesis is that he asserts that the reason Brunetto Latini committed violence against nature was not due to sodomy, but due to his unnatural views of politics. As he put it, Dante considered Brunetto to have done violence to nature by ignoring and actively undermining the natural political order, namely the world monarchy of the Roman Empire. He proves this through connections between Inferno, Canto 15, Purgatorio, Canto 14, and Paradiso, Canto 14. He proves this also by showing three obvious indicators that the cantos are interrelated, and then three main points that show that Brunetto's sinful ideology is also represented in Purgatorio and confirmed in Paradiso. So, before I get into it, what is sodomy? Sodomy is non-procreative sexual activity originally derived from the story of Sodom and Gomorrah in the book of Genesis. And many scholars argue that the biblical city of Sodom and Gomorrah were destroyed because of their rampant homosexual behavior, which attributes homosexuality to the cause of annihilation of these biblical cities. But it's argued that the leaders of Sodom were not homosexual, but in fact heterosexual, and that the sin was inhospitable treatment of resident aliens through sexual humiliation of rape. As Kay put it, Sodom is the image of a community that has been perverted by its leaders, and moreover, the perversion attributed to Sodom in the Bible is not primarily sexual, and in fact, may not be sexual at all. So the first obvious parallelism that Richard Kay makes that connects Canto 15 from the Inferno to the other two cantos that I mentioned has to do with water. So naturally, the nature of fire is to rise upwards. So the falling flakes of fire that we see in this ring of hell in Canto 15 are images that are contrary to nature. But then the parallel that we see in Purgatorio describes natural rain as it falls in the Apennines, forms the Arno, and flows down to the sea, where then the cycle is completed by evaporation that returns the water to the sky. And then lastly, we see the parallel completed again in Paradiso 14, where the blessed enjoy the refreshment of the eternal rain, which is also known as divine grace. And so here we can see three types of rain being represented throughout these three cantos, which is unnatural, natural, and supernatural. So that's kind of Richard Kay's first observation as, okay, these three cantos have this connection. The next one that he makes has to do with vegetation. So in the Inferno, bad Florentines descended from Fiesiolan immigrants and are called bitter sorb trees and beasts who should make fodder of themselves. Dante, who's a good Florentine, is from the holy seed of the original Roman colonists, is portrayed as a sweet fig. And then the parallel to this that we see in Purgatorio 14 shows the Romagna region being characterized by the land is so choked with poisonous growths that tardily would they now be rooted out by tillage. And here he's referring to the families of this region as these plants. And lastly, again, the parallel that we see in Paradiso 14 is where the blessed souls shining with the light of glory are compared to plants blossoming out with flowers. So with these three cantos, we could see another obvious connection that they're all being, or something is being described through plants or vegetation. And lastly, the third obvious parallelism that Richard Kay makes has to do with prophecy. So the major speakers in each of these three cantos speaks of a prophecy. In Inferno 15, Brunetto foretells Dante's exile. In Purgatorio 14, Guido del Duca foresees the purge of the Florentine whites. And in Paradiso 14, Solomon explains with foreknowledge how souls will be reunited with their bodies after the resurrection. So again, another obvious connection. The main speaker in each of these three cantos has some sort of prophecy that they're telling. So now this is where Richard Kay goes into kind of the connections between these three cantos that has to do with Brunetto's ideology and, or I guess his sinful ideology, and how it is portrayed and seen in the other two cantos that are related. So he further connects these cantos by showing how Brunetto's ideas are exemplified and disproved in Purgatorio 14 and replaced by correct counterparts in Paradiso 14. Brunetto distinguishes two elements of Florentine society. He distinguishes good and bad, and he does so explaining in terms of racial stock. And this is because he did it explaining the good element coming from the holy seed of Roman settlers and the bad element of the society coming from immigrants of, I'm going to butcher this, Faisoli, I don't know. So, as Richard Kay put it, Florentine social and cultural disparity may therefore be fairly called racist. To continue this, and with the parallels that we see in the next two cantos, or I should say, canto 14 of Purgatorio and Paradiso. So in Purgatorio, Guido del Duca provides a concrete refutation where he says, "O men of Romagna, turn to bastards." And kind of what that's explaining, or what that's talking about, is that the men of Romagna kind of turn against each other. And that's not possible if Brunetto was correct in saying that these people that have, they were from the holy seed of the Roman settlers, they can't turn bad. But obviously here Guido del Duca is saying, oh, they've turned to bastards. And he's kind of referring to the black Guelphs and the white Guelphs. So Brunetto believed that a pure racial stock would produce nothing but good, as I just said. And if that was true, then Romagna should reflect this. But according to Guido, it doesn't. And lastly, Paradiso's parallel puts heredity and race, like as I was just talking about, in a subordinate place. And so Solomon explains how the souls of the blessed will reassume their bodies at the resurrection, where the souls with him will cry out, Amen. And they show the soul's desire for not only their physical bodies, but also for those of their parents. And that is important because it implies that, yes, we receive our bodies from our ancestors and our bloodline, but not necessarily our character. So again, that goes against Brunetto's idea of racial stock. So the next connection that he makes has to do with Brunetto's Tresor. This piece offered the readers a work on how to conduct a government without a monarch. And it speaks of podestas, which is admin of the city in neutral hands, typically for 6-month terms, which goes pretty much against the idea of monarchy, or of the monarchy of the Roman Empire. So in Purgatorio 14, we can see references to podestas, which is another reason, okay, these cantos are obviously connected. And it's shown such as the 3 tercets. Oh, I'm going to butcher this, but bear with me. The 3 tercets relating to Folchieri da Coboli, who was the podesta of Florence in 1303, and he helped the Black Guelphs exterminate leaders of the White Guelphs. And Guido del Duca's Romagnoles expressed the form of government favored by Brunetto Latini. And then lastly, the parallel of this that we see in Paradiso shows Dante's version of good government, which is with King Solomon, who was the wisest monarch. And lastly, the last connection that he makes here to disprove Brunetto having sinned via sodomy is the theme of Paradiso 14 being glory, and that one achieves true and eternal glory when they are reunited with their physical body. So in Inferno 15, Brunetto recognizes some sort of glory or honor through some form of work. And if you recall, I cannot remember the exact line that it was, but he tells Dante that he would sort of earn this through some sort of work. And he also references one of his own pieces of writing, which to me sort of speaks to, oh, he thinks that maybe he earned his honor or glory through his own work, like in the physical world. And so similar to Brunetto, Guido del Duca recognizes glory as fame and honor in Purgatorio. And he states that a good man's name is safe when his family dies out. Now, the reason that this is all important is because this shows the difference between Brunetto's and Guido's views of glory relating to an unstable glory of the world, and comparing that to the glory of heaven, which is everlasting. So in conclusion, Richard Kay states that the sins of Brunetto Latini actually have nothing to do with a sexual interpretation of violence against nature. He basically says that it was never stated in Inferno 15 that had anything to do with sodomy, and that there are obvious reasons that one should believe that it actually has to do with Brunetto's unnatural views and ideas on politics. And he does this by pointing out, first, just to preface, that the three obvious ways that Inferno 15, Purgatorio 14, and Paradiso 14 are all closely paralleled cantos through the use of water, vegetation, and prophecy. And then he goes to describe the three non-obvious ways that they are closely paralleled to sort of describe how Brunetto's ideas are or sinful ideas are confirmed through the connection of these. And he does this with cultural disparity, politics, and glory. So all in all, the importance of the connections between the cantos is to prove Brunetto's sins as being related to violence against the natural political order by showing how Brunetto's sins and ideas are demonstrated in other sections of the Divine Comedy that directly tie back to Canto 15 of the Inferno. Thank you.